Well, we're almost here. Welcome to the Draft Savages NFL Draft Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Cox. With me tonight, one of my co hosts, Justin Higdon. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to get this draft. I'm ready to see the draft. I'm ready to get it over with. I'm ready for some sleep. Just you name it.
Oh yeah, we're short one tonight. Justice Mosqueda is nursing himself back to health to get ready for this weekend or this week, I guess you could say, since it doesn't really start until or it starts on Thursday. So it'll be Justin and I, and we'll get started on our mock draft. And um, the main thing we want to do is obviously have fun and make fun of everybody in their mock drafts and how terrible they are. Um, but obviously, a lot of it has to do with what we think is going to happen. What you should do or what they should do. Drafts are a lot of fun. It shows thought process. I don't know how many of you that listen to the show read Matt Waldman, but I'm assuming a lot of you. And he has an interesting time capsule draft that he does where he makes the picks based on what he thinks is going to happen in 3 years and who's the best players are going to be. Things like that are really interesting, but they really have nothing to do with Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So Justin and I are going to have some fun and try to figure out if this is going to be something, or what happens as the draft goes on. So we'll get started here. I guess first thing is we both wanted to talk about a couple mock drafts that we've seen and that we enjoyed. I know from a Cardinals fan standpoint, I really enjoyed Ian Wharton. He got the Bleacher Report assignment for the Arizona Cardinals, and I really enjoyed his 7-round mock draft for the Arizona Cardinals. It feels like a lot of times when national guys do it, and I'm sure Justin feels the same way, when national guys do it, they don't do a ton of intel on the teams, and they just feels like they throw up what they're hearing as opposed to, what actually makes sense and what fits. So it all happens. But that was one of my favorites. Another one I actually did enjoy, and I hope it doesn't happen. I did enjoy Peter King's. I thought that was insightful. I thought there was a lot of good information in there, especially like the Eric Flowers to the Rams pick. I thought that was really interesting and not anything I had seen yet. So it was kind of out of left field, but it's one of those picks that actually makes sense when you think about it and who the Rams are and Jeff Fisher. So that was another one. The worst one I saw so far, was it Mike Tanier? Was that the guy that you and I were talking about the other day?
Yeah, the Bleacher Report one. I think
Yeah.
he had Garrett Grayson going to Cleveland at 19. I can't remember who he had at 12, but I'm sure it was terrible. And I understand that we can sit here and pick on the Browns. The Browns make bad picks. I don't think like last year when they picked Justin Gilbert and Johnny Manziel, a lot of people thought that was a good draft. So I think it's kind of lazy to just throw spaghetti at the wall like that and just LOL Browns. But that's the kind of writer Mike Tanier is, and that's not for everybody, not for me.
Do you have a favorite that you've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm looking at. I'm trying to find it, but it was Pete Smith from our very own Football Savages.
Okay.
He had a couple good picks. He did like a 7-round Browns mock, and he kind of steered away from the normal picks. He got Kevin White at 12, and you guys know that I love Kevin White. He got a defensive lineman at 19. It's escaping me at the moment, but it wasn't Danny Shelton. It wasn't one of these guys that we kind of dog. And then the only one I didn't like, the only pick he made that I didn't like was Eddie Goldman, but it was like a 3rd or 4th round pick. And that's something I could probably live with. So, I gave Pete his props. It was probably the first Browns-related mock draft that I had seen all season that didn't make me want to run to the bathroom and puke.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the best mock drafts come from guys that are doing it team oriented as opposed to trying to figure out full like rounds and stuff like that. Because I mean, honestly, it is hard. It's a hard mock drafts are hard. They're kind of useless banter, and that's why we're doing them here on Draft Savages because that's basically what our podcast tries to be: is useless, entertaining as hell banter. So we'll get started, and we had a consensus, and Justice agreed to this as well. There's really no reason to mess with pick one. So I took it because I wanted to get one right in this whole thing.
So you took Lael Collins, right?
Yeah, that's right. Lael Collins. No. Yeah. Jameis Winston to Tampa Bay. Obviously, nobody. I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to expect that to change. I don't know. Any way that it can't happen, I guess.
I don't. I mean, sure, there's a way. It would floor everybody. It would kind of be like the last one I remember that was kind of like out of the blue was when the Texans took Mario Williams when everyone thought they were going to take Reggie Bush. Probably looking back, I probably just wasn't nearly as informed on things as I am now. But that one really caught me off guard. I would be floored if it's not Jameis Winston. Everybody except NFL philosophy, Joe Bustle has been saying Jameis Winston, and I don't know. I think somebody's messing with Joe. But if it is Marcus Mariota at one, he's going to have the last laugh, and he's going to have months of "I told you so"s.
All right, Tennessee Titans number 2. I'm going to let you make the pick, but then I'm going to disagree with you. I don't even know who you're going to pick either, but I'm just going to bring up something, and it was something that we'll talk about. I'll talk about tomorrow, but go ahead.
Well, I kind of like how Eric Stoner's been dogging Marcus Mariota, saying that nobody wants him. The Titans seem clear that they want to trade out of this pick, and they seem to now be using some kind of psychology where they're praising Mariota. I kind of think they're painted into a corner almost. Quarterback seems like a clear need for them, but they don't have the roster that's going to turn around. I still think they probably have hope that they can trade for Phillip Rivers like we talked about last week. But I think that ultimately they don't want Mariota, and I think they're going to take Leonard Williams at number 2.
And here's what I'll say. Yeah, they're probably going to take Leonard Williams. And if we're being honest, like, I'm not a huge Leonard Williams fan. Like, he kind of is like Star Lotulelei. I just don't think he's as good. But in that same class where, like, he's going to be a solid NFL player. I just don't see the value at 2. But here's what I'll say about the Titans. From watching Ken Wisenhunt for however many years he was here in Arizona, and watching Ken Wisenhunt after he got the power, which was right after they went to the Super Bowl, he loves toys. He loves having guys, or he loves early picks on skill position players. So Leonard Williams doesn't necessarily fit his MO. Now, if the Titans upper management is, making the pick over Wiz, I think you're going to be right here. But if it's Wiz, I'm going to bet it's Kevin White. And here's why. Because he's the closest thing to Larry Fitzgerald that we've seen in a while. And I think that he wants to try to replicate that in Tennessee. And he's just that's how he is as a coach, unless he's changed, which, I mean, I don't know. They did draft Taylor Lewan last year, and he drafted Levi Brown and then stopped paying attention to the offensive line in Arizona. So, but I think it's going to be Kevin White. And I don't know why. I just have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be Kevin White. And Titans fans will like Kevin White for a long time. He's going to be a good player, but it's going to get him fired from his second coaching job in the NFL, and he'll never get another one. So that's just my take. I don't know.
he could take the souped-up version of the guy who's already on his roster, Kendall Wright, and draft Amari Cooper. And that would be, but well, I see where you're going with this. White's like the higher upside play, and the more athletic guy, the bigger guy, and a player that he probably Wisenhunt probably thinks can thrive with a quarterback like Mettenberger. So I get where you're coming from, but when when my nose is to the grindstone here, I gotta take Leonard Williams with this pick. But I
Well, I
definitely,
think
regardless, I don't think it's going to be Mariota for them.
yeah, I don't either. And for Mariota's sake, I hope it's not because I don't know if he's going to work out with Wiz. So I hope he goes somewhere that has a coach that's adaptable. Like if he somehow got to San Diego with Mike McCoy, I think that would be perfect. Obviously, not talking about Chip Kelly because obviously that's the perfect fit. But so number 3, Jacksonville. Everybody I've seen has Dante Fowler going there, which makes sense for what they need. But if we've learned anything from, um, oh god, the names escape me now. Whoever the GM is in Jacksonville now, um,
Caldwell.
yeah, uh, Dave Caldwell. If we've learned anything from Caldwell, it's that he's a great poker player and he keeps his cards, close to the vest, all the cliches. So I think it's still going to be Vic Beasley. Like I'm going Vic. I think he's the most talented player, non-quarterback in the draft, and I think that he fits exactly what Jacksonville needs. And let's be honest, nobody saw Blake Bortles coming last year. I think we're going to see the same thing this year, and you're going to see Vic Beasley be the pick.
I like that, and I think that Jacksonville fans, if there's any Jacksonville people listening, would love that pick. I know that they get frustrated when they see things like, but they might see like a mock draft that has Amari Cooper recently. Like that's the hot take pick lately. And one thing I want to say about Jacksonville picks is, today Monday Morning Quarterback Greg Bedard mocked a pass rusher to Jacksonville, but then his reasoning involved them having, I'm sorry, I think he mocked Cooper to them, but the reasoning involved having Jason Babin on their roster. He hasn't been on their roster since prior to last season. So I think that's where the Jags fans get frustrated is, and where a lot of fans get frustrated with the mock drafts is because when people don't cover all 32 teams religiously, they make mistakes like that. And it's beyond me why MMQB doesn't have an editor and fact checker to catch some of these things, because that site's kind of known for things like that lately.
Oakland, where the hell does Oakland go? I think you're going to see they're going to have a good pick. That's what it's going to be. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think that Oakland is going to take Amari Cooper here because I think they want to have a reliable target for Carr and a guy that the two of them can grow together. And I think they probably are going to see Cooper as a pretty clean prospect and a guy who's going to be successful with a young quarterback and have good chemistry early on. Their GM McKenzie is a guy who's high on character, and I haven't heard a negative thing about Amari Cooper's character. So I think that's the pick. I think that would make a lot of Raiders fans happy. I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that they would go off the reservation like they did a few years ago with DJ Hayden. But I think that, this is a pick that they really need to nail down, or their regime, their general manager, their front office is going to be in trouble. And they're probably picking for their jobs right now, so they can't get too chancy with this pick.
So through 4 picks, Mariota's still on the board. Washington, they did pick up Robert Griffin's contract the other day, right?
Yeah, they picked up his 5th-year option. I think that's there's such a dearth of good quarterback play. They got to hope they catch that lightning in a bottle and he rebounds. So I think that was kind of a no-brainer.
So I don't see them picking Marcus Mariota. Like I don't know. I just don't see it. So I'm gonna go somebody we've talked about before, and the safe pick, Brandon Scherf at 5. with Dante Fowler on the board, though, that's the one thing I think we could see change. I think we could see Dante Fowler be the pick there, but I'm gonna go with Brandon Scherf.
Yeah, I think that's a solid play there, but it's way high if they think he's a guard like we have talked about. This is a place where I think this team would have liked to take a guy like Randy Gregory or maybe Shane Ray. But then those guys smoked their way out of this area of the draft. So Scherf's probably viewed as a really safe pick in a draft that I think we can probably agree doesn't have a lot of safety at the top.
The Jets on the board, new coach. Can they make it, or do they make the ballsy pick here?
Man, you probably have more insight into this pick, given their head coach now with Bowles. But that being said, with Bowles becoming the head coach and being a defensive guy, and all the smoke that's around Bud Dupree going in this area, I got to say Bud Dupree here at 6. And again, we're going to see a team that could use a quarterback just dog Mariota. I think he's getting less and less popular, or maybe just the teams aren't really like sold on his personality of being a leader at the NFL level and willing to take him this high, especially when they see a guy, a defensive coach here taking a guy that has that type of upside that Bud Dupree has.
And I think in the way this fell, they'd probably take Fowler, but it's Dupree or Fowler, I think. And the way this fell, I think it's going to be Dupree or Fowler, but I think Dupree's probably a good pick here as well. So they like those big body outside linebackers. That's what Bulls like. So either one's works. 7, the Bears. You have another interesting Mariota spot because I don't think they can pull the trigger, but I think they would want to. I mean, don't you? New regime, get out from under the Cutler problem.
I think they probably would like to, but that contract is saddling them right now, and they've got a new GM. He probably wants to put his mark on this franchise, but he's probably willing to give Cutler a year and try and put some people around him. So I would be pretty surprised, and I don't think anybody here in Chicago thinks that they're going to make that pick, even if he does fall. But then what we're talking about now is if Mariota is there at 7, does a team like Cleveland trade up to 7? And we already know that the Bears might be targeting another guy that Cleveland's eyeballing too. So I don't know. Who do you think's this pick?
So if this was the real draft, I think this would be the trade spot. I think the Bears would grab some extra picks here. Interesting tweet that came out, I think about an hour ago, was from 12 to like 45. I think it was Pete Prisco tweeted it. Like, there's no real huge difference, and that's something we've talked about since December. There's no real huge difference in talent, so teams might be more interested in getting a 2016 first rounder than maybe like stocking up this year. So maybe a team like the Bears are willing to take 12 from Cleveland and then their 2016 first, as opposed to making them give up 12 and 19 this year, which it sounds like Cleveland is reluctant to do as right. is. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what everybody's saying. So if there was a trade, I think this would be the trade where you'd see Cleveland go up from 12 to go get the guy they want. But no trades. We're not that fun. I know, boring. So I'm going to go Dante Fowler. The fact that they're transitioning to a 34, Vic Fangio, I think that's kind of the perfect fit. And if they got a guy like Fowler at 7, I think they'd be ecstatic.
I think Fowler, a lot of people think, is a good player. If Justice were here, he would tell us that Dante Fowler is not a force player, so it is going to increase the bust chances. Again, with Chicago having a new general manager, we don't really know what to expect. This is like a wild card pick, and I agree with you. This is probably an area where they would like to trade, and he would like to accumulate picks. So again, he can make his mark on this franchise. But with no trade, Fowler's a good pick, and especially with the top 2 receivers being off the board already.
Takes us to Atlanta. Help out our friend Andrew Parsons here, and don't give him somebody like Shane Ray.
For Atlanta already with all these pass rushers off the board. So I'm going to give Atlanta Todd Gurley at number 8, just to be a dick.
Oh, geez, that's going to kill everybody.
No, but seriously, I mean, we've heard the smoke this week about Todd Gurley going off the board as high as 6 to the Jets. We've seen him go off the board to the Giants in a mock draft. And here, and we heard rumblings. And I remember when Andrew was on the show a few weeks ago, I asked him, does Atlanta pull the trigger if Gurley's there in the second round? And he said they have to. Well, they might have to do it a lot sooner. And with, Dupree's off the board, we've got Fowler off the board, we've got Beasley off the board, and the 2 best pass rushers have off the field issues that are scary top 10 wise. So they take a scary knee injury guy.
Yeah, and I could see that. So the Falcons go Gurley. I've written this pick in pen now, so it's going to be absolutely wrong. There's no way it happens. But the Giants take Andres Pete.
Great pick.
I think it was Eric Galco that said that. What was that, 2 weeks ago with Justice and I when you were off the show? And I think that's what happens. I think it's Andres Pete. I think he's goes in the top 10, and you and I just sit back and wait to see what happens. Here's the thing I'll say too, because I've seen this around Twitter a little bit lately, especially with like last year's guys. I will never root for a kid to not do well. Like if I evaluate a kid and I like Shane Ray, for instance, I don't think he's going to be a good pro. I think he'll be a situational player who may, get up to like 7 or 8 sacks in some seasons, but I don't see it being a consistent thing. But if I'm wrong, I'll be really happy. Like I never want any of these kids to fail or at anything. So you won't see me being that guy that's like, oh, can't wait for, this player to fall on his face after an okay rookie season. That's just not how I'm going to do it. So other people might, but I'll make fun of them on the show. So
yeah, I mean, I would never root for Pete to fail. And I mean, to be fair, I gave him a 3rd round grade. My biggest problem I've never really said he just flat out can't play. It's that I've just never understood him as a 1st round pick. But he is more athletic than some of these other guys. He's certainly more athletic than Eric Flowers, who also gets 1st round runs. So, there's not a lot of offensive tackle power. There's not high power offensive tackle talent in this draft. So I could definitely see a guy like that going early. I just think you're not gonna ever get the bang for your buck with that pick.
That takes us to the St. Louis Rams.
I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this because this is a rumor that I just heard as I was talking to the folks over at Draft Breakdown. And we're going to go with the shocker pick so far of this draft at 10 overall. And we're going with Benardrick McKinney from Mississippi State. The rumor is that they think that he's a player that can come in and take over for James Laurinaitis in that defense. Jeff Fisher and company, they've made some interesting picks, taking Tavon Austin notably in the top 10 a couple of years ago. So this is the real surprise pick coming off the board. McKinney, I don't think, some people probably don't even think is worth a 2nd round pick, but he's one of the biggest, most athletic linebacker prospects. So St. Louis takes a big roll of the dice and takes McKinney.
That's interesting. I like rumors like that, because the rumor last year I got about this time was from my source named Justice Mosqueda. I'll name my sources, that the Cardinals were going to make a move up for Blake Bortles. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of these rumors, at like these last minute rumors, are stuff that people are finally finding out and they're sharing with people. So that takes us to the Vikings. Here's what I know about the Vikings. I don't know anything at all. Seriously. Like, everybody I talk to about the Vikings tells me that um, Mike Zimmer loves like long athletic corners, and so I'm like, oh, so he loves Marcus Peters, right? And they're like, no, Trey Waynes. I'm like, wait, I thought you said long athletic physical corners. They're like, yeah, and I'm like, well, that's not Trey Waynes. Like, have you watched him play? Oh well, so I'm gonna guess it's Trey Waynes, but I mean, honestly, like, I I don't know. I don't know what I mean. What are your thoughts? I think Marcus Peters makes more sense to me here, but
Man,
everything
I
I've
love
heard.
Peters, but we keep hearing rumblings that teams are kind of a little wary of him as far as off the field, and that might not be a Zimmer type of player. Um, but I'm with you. I don't think Wayne's. You know what would be like the wild card here if you're talking about corners is maybe Kevin Johnson or Eric Rowe. Those guys intrigue me at this pick. Or what about Byron Jones? I think it's going to be a corner here, but I think there's a lot to choose from, and none are off the board at this point. But Wayne seems to be the one that all the rumblings are about.
So I'm going to take Waynes, even though I don't agree with it. That just shows you. I mean, I've taken Pete and Waynes in the top like 11 picks. That just shows you. And Fowler. There you go. So, all right, you're up. And this is your Browns right here.
Yeah. Well, Mario's still sitting there, right? But I'm going to go against the producer here because we just got some good news about Johnny Manziel from our buddy Joe Thomas, the veteran leader of the Browns. He said Manziel is a new man. So I think the Browns, despite my orders to pick Mariota right here, they're going to pass, and they're going to take Devontae Parker at 12.
Jeez, I don't know how far this is going to go with Mariota all of a sudden. This is terrible. Actually, it's going to stop right here because I'll be crazy enough to do this. So, yeah, I think if Mariota's not on the board or they don't make a move up for Mariota, I think Parker's a smart pick. The other name that we haven't called, so you're going to take Parker over Kevin White here?
Oh, we took Kevin White at number. Oh, I'm sorry. You took. I took Leonard Williams. You were saying Kevin White. I'm going to take. I would take Kevin White, but I'm going to take Parker here because that's who I think the Browns have been linked to. The other guy they've been linked to pretty recently is Brashad Perriman, but I don't think they would look at him as a first round, as a number 12 pick. He might be a guy more at 19. So as much as I would prefer White, that I haven't heard him connected with the Browns. Maybe that makes it more likely, but I'll say Parker, and part of that's because I thought that White was already picked. So
that's fine.
But
I'm going to screw up the whole mock now, and Matt Miller did this a couple weeks ago, so I'm not even taking credit for it. The Saints, with their first pick, take Marcus Mariota. I think if he falls this far, this is a good pick. Like, this is something that we've talked about on the show quite a bit, and like, I don't think this is going to happen. I think somebody's going to trade up to 2 and grab him, but with the way that the NFL runs, if he was to fall to 13 and get to play behind Drew Brees for 2 years, I think that would be the perfect situation. And then have Sean Payton be his coach, a guy that allows, that has a wide open offense that allows his quarterback to make quick decisions and things of that nature. I think that would be the perfect situation for him, not just stylistically, but from a learning curve standpoint. But that's not going to happen. We know how the NFL is. Somebody's going to pick him at 2 and then ask him to start day 1 and then wonder why he flopped.
Is there any chance that New Orleans, because everything you said makes so much sense about fit wise for him and chance for success, and there's been a lot of talk recently about how Breeze his arm is just kind of shot. Is there any chance New Orleans moves up and does this when they start like if he gets past the Jets at 6, does New Orleans with those 2 first-round picks, do they make a move like this?
I think they could. I think it's similar to what the Cardinals were looking at last year. Like they probably have like a number where they're like, okay, if he gets past 6, we'll make a call to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be similar to what we said earlier. Like, hey, Chicago, we'll give you 13 and the 2016 first round pick. They'll probably offer 31 because they know that 2016 is a better draft. Well, it might be a better draft, whereas the talent from 31 to wherever they pick in the second round is negligible. So they probably would prefer to give up their 31, but I'm sure Chicago's going to be like, no, we'll take next year's number 1 in case you guys suck again, and we can grab that, hopefully 2 top 10 picks because Chicago's going to be terrible. So sorry, Bears fans. I'm a Cardinals fan. I know what terrible football looks like.
They know. I think they know here. So now we're at 14, and now we can say that the best receiver with the second and third best receivers off the board already, the best receiver is falling right into Miami's lap, and the Dolphins take Kevin White.
Yeah, and everything that I've read is that they want either Gurley or a wide receiver to help Tannehill out. So either one of those picks, kind of makes sense. And if Kevin White falls, which let's be honest, any of these receivers could fall. I read a mock the other day where Amari Cooper got to 11 and the Vikings picked him. So any of these, it's not a fall when it seems like everybody's wide receiver board is different, and just because the guy's picked at 14 doesn't mean he's not as good as the guy picked at, 4. And that happens a lot. You look at last year with Sammy Watkins, who you and I both had as our top wide receiver. And
I said Mike Evans.
Oh yeah, so I'm sorry, but we both had them, at the top of our. But Odell Beckham was the best wide receiver in that class last year, and he went 11. So, it works out in the end. Fit where they end up. So that brings us to the 49ers, and I want to take Danny Shelton here just because I like to piss people off, but I really think it's going to be Eric Armstead. Plus, I want you to have to be forced to take Danny Shelton at 19 when he's there. So I do think it's going to be Eric Armstead. Like, there's just too much commotion there that he's going to pick. I don't know what your thoughts are, but
I agree. That there's so much noise and so much smoke that there's probably some fire about that pick. But I'm wondering here, we've got a situation where Trey Waynes, who might be the 4th corner on somebody's board, is off the board. And now there's all these really good corners sitting there for San Francisco, and that's kind of a need for them. The other night I was in a mock, and I took Marcus Peters at this spot. That was a mock, not like what we're trying to do, which is more trying to predict, but that was more like a picking what you would do situation. In that case, I would take Peters. I think he's a top 10 player in this draft. Armstead, I think, is a second, maybe second or third round player who's getting propped up because of what he might be able to do. So, but yeah, this seems to be almost a shoe-in if somebody else doesn't surprise and take him earlier.
By the way, you're getting killed for your Bernardrick McKinney pick. I just want you to know that, and I'm placing all the blame on you too. So,
well, I'll take that because hey, that's just what I heard. That's not what I would do. It's not what I would do.
That takes us to the Texans. Is this Philip Dorsett? Is that where this Philip Dorsett lands, or are you not that crazy?
Well, I'm not that crazy, but maybe the Texans are. But Philip Dorsett, I'm just not really buying Philip Dorsett getting picked that early. And we've got Shelton sitting there too. That's a player that the Texans could use. I'm going to go along with what these, because I want to give you the satisfaction of letting Shelton fall to 19. I'm going to go with some of these mocks that I'm seeing online and go with a receiver. But I'm going to say that it's Brashad Perriman here, not Philip Dorsett, because Perriman is a big, strong guy, kind of like in the same vein as White and Parker. For a team that might be eyeballing those two guys, especially after letting Andre Johnson go, that seems to be Perriman seems to be more like along those lines. And even though he has the drops, he's got the big playability, and he's got that 4.26 40. So I'm going Perriman here over Philip Dorsett. I can't see the little guy going that high.
Yeah, and I've seen that mocked a lot. That makes sense. I could see it happening. Next on the board is, who do we have next? I don't even remember.
On the board,
the Dolphins.
Yep. No, we've got San Diego Chargers.
Oh, Chargers. That's right. They all look the same. Irrelevant AFC teams. No, sorry, Kyle. Just joking, buddy. If Gurley was here, I'd make this the pick. I think with the way that this draft has fallen, God, this is a tough one. I don't know.
Not going to go with Melvin?
I want to, but I'm going to save him for the Lions. Spoiler alert.
So all our later picks.
But I don't know. Melvin makes sense here. I don't want to do it because I don't want Kyle Posey to yell at me. So, but you know what? I'm gonna take. Let's go Lyle Collins, and I think the ability to flip to guard for him or tackle if they're really moving. Who's the big guy they got? DJ Fluker into guard. I think that makes him a good pick here. I would almost take Melvin Gordon, but I'm not going to.
And I think here we have to talk about the news about Collins. Today Adam Schefter broke a story which now seems kind of misleading as far as Collins being questioned in relation to a murder investigation. It doesn't sound like Collins is a suspect at all. It sounds more like they are questioning him in regards to a paternity question. So we don't want to assume anything about La'el Collins right now, given the news that came out today. And I think this is hopefully this is something that doesn't, cloud him. As much as I've kind of dogged him as being overrated on the show, certainly wouldn't relish in the fact that he might take a hit because of this news, especially if it's just not fair the way it was reported. But if Collins is there and if NFL teams can get the information to make sure that he's not at all responsible in this case, then, that pick makes a lot of sense.
So you get to anger the Chiefs fans and Sully, and then
I'll give you receiver, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you back-to-back picks, so you can take your other shot for the Browns here.
Okay, well, I don't want to anger our good friend Sully, and I don't want to anger Jinx. So I'm thinking cornerback here because I know that's a position of need for them, and we've got a guy I think is the best cornerback on the board still in Marcus Peters. So this is where I think Andy Reid is a coach. He's a veteran coach. He's been around the block a million times. He's probably not afraid to take a chance on a player like Marcus Peters and then have Peters fit in with what he's trying to do. So I'm going with Marcus Peters here. I think, why pick a receiver when we know Alex Smith isn't going to target him?
Exactly. That's the Sully line of thinking. So, all right, and you're back up with 19.
All right, well, the Browns, they desperately need a run stuffing nose tackle. So they're going to take Danny Shelton. I mean, let's be realistic. They could take if Danny Shelton's sitting there at 12. I took Parker because I just want to be greedy. But if he's sitting there at 12, that's probably the pick. And there's a chance he could go 7 to the Bears, 9 to the Giants. So Shelton's probably going at the first pick, and then the Browns are left jockeying whether or not they want to take a defensive lineman or a receiver at 19. But the way this falls right now, we got Shelton at 19, and the Browns brass is probably really thrilled if that happens.
Yeah, and I don't understand the Shelton love. I know your guy, Brendan Leister, really likes him, and I respect Brendan. So I'm fine with that. As long
This
as
is I mean, the reasoning is Brendan and our buddy Ryan Burns, Football Sickness. He's not the biggest Shelton fan. Pete Smith's not the biggest Shelton fan, but they all Browns fans recognize that is a huge hole in their defense. So, grudgingly, I would be okay with it. They better nail that other first round pick though, because as we talked about, I just think Shelton's a 2-down guy, and that's a lot of value to place.
So sitting here with the Eagles at 20. I know a lot of people like what's his name, or not like, but all of a sudden Demarius Randall's being mocked there, which is crazy to me. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with Byron Jones because I think the athleticism and like the long athletic corner makes sense for Chip Kelly and what he likes to do. The other guy that I've read a lot about that like makes sense and is in the Kelly mold of players is Jalen Strong. So
I love that.
I would think that would be a good pick, but I'm gonna go Byron Jones. I think for whatever reason that's gonna be the pick. And you get the Bengals at 21, and I've taken Lyle from you, so now you got to go a different route.
Well, we want to take an unathletic offensive lineman, so we'll take Eric Flowers there. I think that's another name that's been connected to them. This is basing this on their kind of type that they have, and we know they need offensive line. Flowers is probably a guy they view as a tackle or a guard, so I could see him being the pick here if their guy Collins is off the board already.
So if Collins is off the board, and you and I, don't agree with like Flowers and even Collins, but what if like Jake Fisher? Does he make sense there, or is that not? Is that I don't know. Like I don't know the Bengals metric system well enough, but it seems like
on paper it does. He's an athletic guy, but I'm not sure that he's like a really great fit for what they do on offense. But that being said, maybe they might be one of these teams that likes Donovan Smith. We're hearing that as a late riser kind of, and he's got an invitation to Chicago this week, so that tells us he's probably a first or second round pick in theory. At least that's what the league's thinking. So by inviting him, but I think I'm seeing Flowers mocked as high as in the top 10 or 13 picks. So that's the player who just seems to fit their mold better. But I guess it could be any of those three guys. Fisher just seems more like a zone guy to me. So it didn't quite seem like a fit.
By the way, you've redeemed yourself on Twitter. All the Chiefs fans are very happy with your Marcus Peters pick. So
excellent.
So your Bernardrick McKinney pick was chastised, and now you're back in the good graces of everybody.
Well, now I got to get back out.
That's right. So Pittsburgh, I think with Waynes there. Oh no, I already took Trey Waynes. Good. I don't have to pick him again. Kevin Johnson then. You already took Marcus Peters, right? Yeah. So Kevin Johnson is the pick here. I think finally the Steelers draft a cornerback early. So that's just my pick. I'd have Johnson right behind what's our buddy's name, Marcus Peters, in terms of talent, ahead of Byron Jones. I'd actually have Eric Rowe ahead of Byron Jones as well, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us to the Lions. You don't have to pick Melvin Gordon. You can pick whoever the hell you want. I was just joking around.
I'm going, with the Lions, I'm going to go with Malcolm Brown that'll annoy our buddy Jeff Risden, but I know he's kind of coming to terms with that because the more that it gets talked about, the more I see Lions fans are kind of convinced that that's going to be the pick. So Malcolm Brown comes in. They lose defensive lineman in free agency. He comes in. He becomes a day one starter for them. Even if he's not the fan favorite right there, he was productive. He did show he could get to the quarterback. He needs to do it more consistently, but he's an underclassman. So, there's upside there. There's a lot of good athleticism for a 300-plus pound guy, and I think that he fits. And with the Giants defensive line coaching, they've shown that they can really get that fire lit under guys.
And you mean the Lions. I know what you meant, though.
Right, what did I say?
Giants. Same difference, right? They're a good defensive line coaches, too, though. So
yeah.
At least you didn't say somebody terrible like the Browns defensive line coaches.
I don't even know who they are.
All right, so that gives me Melvin Gordon on the board, and I'm just going to let him pass right by. And I'm actually going to take a guy. So I got a mock tonight with my boss over at Revenge of the Birds that we're going to do, and we're talking Cardinals and stuff like that. And when it comes to the Cardinals, they have like some philosophies, and he wrote about it the other day, and it's that they usually have, I think they're more of a tiered, like horizontal board team where you talk about the need and then whether or not that guy that's a need fits into the round one talent level. Because you saw like Jonathan Cooper at 7, and not many people had Cooper as a top 10 prospect. I think he was almost a consensus number 2 guard on the board, but he fit what the Cardinals needed. And then you had Dayon Buchanan at 27 or 8 last year. And again, I mean, most people had Buchanan in that 35 to 45 range, and they picked him at 27 or 28, whatever it was. And I think that's just the way the Cardinals brass works now. I think that they identify what they need, and then they find the player that fits best for what they're trying to do. So I think it comes down to Preston Smith and the guy whose name I can't pronounce, Owagmogbe, Odigizua. So I think it comes down to those two guys. And just because my buddy Jess is going to take the Preston Smith angle tonight, sorry to spoil that for people that are going to listen later, but I'm going to take Diggy at 24. He fits the Cardinals mold. He fits the athletic standpoint of what they want. He's a team captain. Like, there's a lot of like boxes that he checks off for what the Cardinals want to do. So I'm going to make that pick.
That's a nice pick. And, you get a pass rusher without having to take a gamble on these guys that we've talked about being in trouble off the field late in the game. So I get that pick. I would have liked Preston Smith better, but I get why you didn't want to double that up on your show. So, but I was surprised that you didn't take Mario Edwards. He's a late riser.
Yeah, and Daniel Jeremiah mentioned him, and Daniel Jeremiah and Charles Davis on their draft thing, and my boss Jess texted me during it, and he's like, have you heard anything about goodness, what's the guy's name you just mentioned?
What about Preston
Mario Edwards.
Mario Edwards, yeah.
Have you heard anything about Mario Edwards to the Cardinals? I'm like, no. He's like, because remember last year, Jeremiah and Davis did the same thing, and they were the first people to mention Dayon Buchanan to the Cardinals in the first round. So he's like, do you think that happens again? I'm like, God, I hope not. I like him. I like Mario Edwards, but I don't know where he plays, and I don't know.
I actually like Mario Edwards too, and I think it'd be fun too. I have him as a second round guy. I think it'd be fun to see him in the first round, but I can see, I actually kind of think it's more likely he goes in the first round than Diggy because of the hips. I think, NFL teams are always scared of hip injuries and knee injuries, just any kind of, historic injuries that they need to study with their MRIs. So I kind of think Edwards is a more likely one, but I hadn't heard him connected to the Cardinals until just now.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see what happens.
So now we've got Carolina coming up.
And you've got offensive linemen that aren't good there. Well, I shouldn't say aren't good, but aren't good right now.
So like I'm looking at CBS Sports mock drafts, and every one of these guys has DJ Humphries at this pick. But I'm going to go – I don't want to do that because I want to be different. And I'm going to take Melvin Gordon for the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to surprise, but they do have they could use a running back, and they've shown like last year when they took Kelvin Benjamin that they're not afraid to go against the grain, and they want a playmaker. I think their offensive linemen that they really like are off the board. Humphreys maybe has some injury question marks. So I'm going with Melvin Gordon here because I think they probably don't even think he would get to them. And now he falls to them, and they probably, if they have him high on their board, considering the need at running back, they might be thrilled to see this happen. Do we have any Panthers listeners anyway? Because
just Matt.
Okay.
I'll tweet that out in a second. We got a couple minutes here, and then I'll fire up their takes at you. I'll make sure to tag him too, so we get that taken care of.
Excellent.
The next one we have is it the Ravens now?
Yeah.
Yep, Ravens at geez, you just took my guy, jerk. That's actually where I was going to take him. But since he's not there, and we know that the Ravens love to take people with off-field character issues, isn't that what they said? Wasn't that what was said today? Didn't somebody write that? Like Ozzie Newsome's great at taking character issues and making them non-character issues or something like that?
Probably. Our good friend Greg Linton is, he's beside himself whenever somebody says that. And I'm kind of on his side because I think given what happened last summer, I don't think they're going to do that. But I'm very intrigued where you're going with this.
So I'm not one of those guys. I'm going to take one of the weed smokers, and I'm going to take Shane Ray. And here's why I take Shane Ray over Randy Gregory, because we haven't taken either of those guys yet. And the reason I take Shane Ray here is because he kind of is like Terrell Suggs in terms of like bad numbers, like bad metrics, but he's got that like off the charts production thing. And he has the same, if you kind of go back and like look at the draft breakdowns, it's same like intangible crap that everybody spews when you can't identify what makes a player great outside of stats. So Shane Ray, I think if he does fall, Baltimore, to take over for Pernell McPhee in pass rushing situations, and then they'll slowly work him into the Terrell Suggs role as Suggs gets ready to retire.
Yeah, that's an interesting pick. But I like that you kind of changed it up on me because I thought you were going to go with Dorial Greenback, and then that was going to set us off. But I like that. I like that you went with that. But now I'm sitting with Dallas's pick, and I really don't know where to go with them because that was a player that I kind of thought they might be interested there. So I'm going to go with Eric Rowe. I think he's still there on the board, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And we've already lost the other tall corners. So I'm going Eric Rowe for the Cowboys. I think that's a player, that fills an immediate need for them. He's got some positional versatility, although I like my corner. Really good athlete. And Dallas has been picking pretty well lately, I think.
I like that too. I've heard Demarius Randall there. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know. So that takes us to Denver. I can't decide what they're going to do, but what?
Bryce Petty.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go with I'm actually going to go with Jake Fisher here
Okay.
because I think that they have a need at offensive line, and I don't know why. Outside of I've read a lot of stuff that Fisher's kind of nasty, and people talk about, oh, like he displays a nasty personality on the field. I'm like, doesn't that usually mean like guys are dirty? And like, how can we tell that? Like, so I want to read that, oh, he's a player I don't like facing because he's dirty. He's like, he I shouldn't say dirty, but he takes it like right up to the edge. And I've read that about Fisher. So I think that makes sense in Gary Kubiak's offense. And he can play either right tackle or guard for them right away. So I think that's a guy that makes sense there for them. And they need offensive line help. So that's just what I think.
Yeah, that's a good pick. And I look at these other mocks, and a lot of them have offensive line going there. So, as much as I'd like to see a crazy pick like Petty there, that doesn't seem like Elway's style. And, with Peyton Manning's career winding down, I think it's smart to keep surrounding him and keep trying while you can and make a nice pick like that. Fisher's probably the most athletic offensive lineman, at least at tackle in the draft. So, outside of Scherf, he's probably the most athletic guy, and that does fit a need for them. So I like that. That's a good pick. So now we have the Colts.
The Colts.
And I've got this like almost in pen at this point. We've mentioned him a couple of times already, but I'm going Demarius Randall, the skyrocketing draft stock. And a lot of guys think he's trash, but I actually like Demarius Randall. I think he's a second-round player. He's a playmaker at safety. He fills a huge need for them. I don't think Colts people would really like this pick, though. What do you think?
No, I agree. And I think in the my actual mock that I'm going to submit for Thursday, I think that's who I had them pick. I can't remember now off the top of my head. So it's easier when you do it just by yourself, because then you don't have to worry about what other people are going to do. You can just make up your own shit as you go. Excuse my language. Sorry. I know I offend everybody out there. So that takes us to the Packers, and Justice gave me a checklist that I had to go down.
So obviously you're going to ignore that.
Yeah. No, I think I want to pick Jalen Collins here because Eric Rowe's off the board now. And who's our other corners on the board? I don't really remember, to be honest.
I think we've taken them all. I mean, Kevin Johnson's off the board, Byron Jones is off the board, Marcus Peters off the board.
Yeah, so he told me that it's going to be corner or inside linebacker. McKinney's off the board. I've heard Denzel Perryman, and that's who I picked in a mock that I did. But I don't know. I don't know them. You like Perryman or you like Jalen Collins?
No, I like the pick. I like mocking Perryman to the Packers. I just like it because that's what came up earlier tonight. In fact, again, Josh Liskowitz from Draft Breakdown and GM Jr. He mentioned Perryman as one that he almost is like rubber stamping that pick to them if he's there.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. So it makes sense. Yeah, let's go with Perryman just because it's more fun that way. So I'll go Perryman, and that brings us back to the Saints.
This is where I want to put Mario Edwards Jr. because some of the mocks have seen them getting defensive linemen. I think Edwards he kind of got a bum rap, I think. But I also think he's a player who his father played in the NFL level. And I mentioned this before, but I get the feeling that he's been kind of like told to save some for the payday. And he tested out really well. I know he's being lumped in as an edge. I think that's kind of oversimplifying things with him. He's a defensive end. I think a player who could move inside on in certain four-man fronts, create pressure, stop the run. He's athletic. We've seen a clip where he's actually covering a running back way down the field, and he's with him step for step. This is a good player. as far as prospects go, it's just, can you keep him motivated? And I think that at the NFL level, and with his father being a former NFL player, I think he's going to be a better pro than maybe he's getting credit for right now.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. So the last pick to end it, um, the Patriots. Could they take Randy Gregory? I don't know. Can they? Do you think?
They
Or does it?
can. I don't really see it happening, but the Patriots, what they do, all kinds of crazy things, and make them work. So who knows? I mean,
And Ethan Hammerman tweeted out the other day that the Patriots see him as like Jamie Collins, kind of off the ball, big, fast linebacker. But I'm gonna go with our guy Shaq Thompson here, just because that's who I've heard from kind of the beginning. So I'm going to go Shaq Thompson to round out this mock draft and finish up for the night. I think it's going to be an interesting draft. I think we're going to get maybe 3 picks right the entire night, which I'm cool with because I don't care about accuracy. It's all about having fun. But what are your closing thoughts? Not necessarily just on this mock, but as we head into the draft on Thursday.
I think this is one of the most interesting years that I can remember, because I think people's processes, their methods, people are experimenting a little bit this year, trying to add some people we see trying to add some metrics. I have myself added metrics into the equation. Justice's force players is really taking hold, and people really trust that. There's other things, College Football Focus coming out with their production grades and their statistics. These things are going to impact draft evaluation as we move forward, and it's going to be interesting to see if it's in what way. Are things going to become more accurate, or are we going to overvalue guys like Henry Anderson, who I think is a 4th-round pick, who CFF and Josh Norris and many other guys that I've seen on Twitter think is a 1st-round type of player. I don't see it with that. I think we're going to see a lot of discrepancies like that in rankings, and it's going to be interesting midway through this upcoming season to see how those things take shape, and how those ideas take shape, and how we approach those type of metrics, grades, and things like that going forward.
Yeah, and I think we're going to, as you said, we're going to see a lot of experimentation, especially in a class where it's not necessarily deep in talent. So you're going to, or I shouldn't say that. It's deep in talent, but not top heavy in talent. So there's a lot of guys that are equal. I mean, you and I have said before that we think it's kind of from 15 to 65, 75 is pretty much, you could take a name and put them in there, and you're going to get some disagreements from a lot of people, but there might not be too much difference in terms of talent. So, yeah, I think that's going to be interesting because I think people, like you said, are going to experiment with their rankings and how they do things this year to tighten it up for future drafts where the talent maybe is a little more difficult to discern in terms of who's the top talent, as opposed to here where everybody's really equal and there's 8 to 12 guys that are clearly at the top and then everybody else. So
I think another thing that's going to be really fascinating is the quarterbacks. We've got generally 2 quarterbacks that are generally considered 1st-round picks. And then there's a lot of differences on who's that 3rd quarterback. We've heard everything from Chris Bonner from Colorado State Pueblo to Sean Mannion to Garrett Grayson and Bryce Petty. Where is that 3rd quarterback coming off the board, and who's it going to be? That's going to be fascinating to me. And then how many quarterbacks get drafted, because we've talked about it all year long. This is not a good quarterback class. And then sometimes people see things that aren't there because they need quarterback.
I agree. All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll do a wrap probably. Maybe we'll try to get together this weekend. I don't know. We're both busy people, but we'll definitely get together next weekend and wrap up the draft before we move on to to something that I'm gonna start to put together before we get going, and and I'll introduce it maybe next week when I confirm our first guest. But it'll be an interesting look, kind of back at the draft and the draft community as we go through what was before, and how good people truly are at what they're doing. So I appreciate your time as always, and I appreciate everything you've put into this over the last 7 or 8 months, and I look forward to doing it again next year and closing out this draft season.
Absolutely, man. It's been a blast. I enjoy every second of it. So look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right, buddy. Have a good one, and make sure you subscribe on iTunes and give us a rating and a shout out to what we need to improve on, because we're always looking to get better. So thanks, guys.
And make sure you tell us how much our picks suck tonight.
That's right. On Twitter at AFC to NFC. I have another show, and you guys can tweet me.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.